Grace, welcome to the Big Lab podcast. How are we doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Would you like to give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah, so I am Grace. I am an identity and mindset coach. Previously did fitness and fitness coaching for a long period of time, and I've recently made the transition, which I'm sure you'll kind of hear a little bit more about as we kind of go through and that evolves. And yeah, I've been doing mindset and identity for since November now, which kind of was a quite a smooth transition as a whole. And yeah, just thoroughly enjoying that and seeing the changes that I can help people make.
Yeah, it's something that we're definitely going to get into. Obviously, we met, what was it, maybe 2 months ago now in London at Michael Smoke's live podcast
Yeah,
show.
I think was that 2 months ago?
It can't be far off if it isn't.
Yeah, it must have been.
But yeah, we spent quite a long time outside afterwards speaking relatively about this topic as well, whilst I got sunburnt in,
Yeah.
in 20 degrees.
Fully
So,
fair.
yeah. So first of all then, so what led you to the work that you do today? Obviously you say you've worked in fitness and now you've moved to sort of identity and mindset.
Yeah, so I basically kind of going back to paint a picture, I was always into like fitness when I was at school and younger, and it was kind of my safe space where I just channeled all of my struggles and things into school. I absolutely hated school. It was not for me. I just was very like ADHD, did not do well with sitting still, and thought that I was just really freaking dumb. But I actually got sent to special needs for like a day when I was like 5 years old because I just refused to work. And the teacher actually had to apologize to my mum, and be like, she's not actually special needs. She just, yeah, we've discovered she doesn't want to work. So that kind of continued all through school and getting into sort of trouble all the time and no good there. And I sort of fell into having sport as my kind of clutch in that way for my mental stability. And then when I came out of school, I basically hit a point where all of my mental health just like absolutely plummeted, and I started getting really bad anxiety, and I never had heard of like anxiety or panic until then. And so I started going into using drugs and drinking loads of alcohol, and I couldn't really understand why I was feeling this way. All of my upbringing, I grew up with quite a turbulent environment. I'm one of six, so our household was chaotic to say the least. And some people in my family were quite like aggressive, and there was a lot of shouting and things like that. So I became quite aggressive in how I dealt with things. So then when I kind of left and I got into drinking and drugs and things like that, I basically just hit rock bottom. This is where I was like 18, 19, moved to Australia, just decided to book a flight to Australia without any kind of preparation and just on a whim. I was like, this obviously can't get any worse. And I was at a point in my life where like something needed to change and I needed to kind of hit that rock bottom. Now looking back at it, I'm super grateful. But obviously in that time, I just had no idea what was going on. So I basically went to the doctors and I was like, what is wrong with me? I got told I had bipolar, prescribed lithium, was very confused in that state. And it was in that moment when I came back and I remember distinctively being like, this cannot be it. Like, how have I just been prescribed a drug for something that they've spent 15 minutes talking to me about? At the age of like 19, I'm obviously very young. Like, what is going on? Surely there has to be more analysis around this situation. So in that moment, I was like, I need to do something about this. I need to change something, and it's all down to me. So I started diving into reading and understanding about Buddhism and understanding about mental health. And the first thing that I needed to start with, because I really struggled with binge eating. So part of my clutch was also food. I would order this big fat off pizza. I remember I would get extra cheese on it. It was absolutely disgusting thinking back to it. And I would just devour it. And I used to also smoke weed, so that obviously didn't help. And that's where my kind of journey started. I started like losing weight because I obviously hated how I looked. And that was like the beginning to me actually making that change. And then along that way, as I developed the kind of fitness side of things and I became more mentally like aware of how things actually do change and how you do change, um, that's when I realized all of my fat loss clients that were coming to me, that if they weren't losing weight, it wasn't because they weren't pushing hard enough and they didn't have enough willpower or discipline. It was because they hadn't actually shifted who they were. So we come to this problem all the time where people are like, diets don't work, they're not effective, but actually it just falls down to someone's psychology bringing them back to that reality, which is very much why I made the change that I did, because firstly, I didn't want to just work with people with fat loss. I wanted to do a wider range of different people, but also that understanding that so many people feel broken because they can't stick to a deficit or they can't stick to the gym. And no one's really explaining the psychological reasons as to why someone doesn't stick to something.
Yeah, I think especially with fat loss these days, everyone wants that instant result, don't they? They don't want to have to put like the hard work in for a long period of time. It's We can get anything these days in an instant. It can be Amazon, it can be a food delivery. You can have it within 20, 30 minutes.
Right.
Unfortunately, if you want fat loss, then it's not going to happen overnight. You didn't get overweight overnight, so why do you expect the weight to come off in the same sort of time? And yeah, it's one of them. You've got to change the person, you've got to change the identity, you've got to become a new person. But at the same time, it's not about going from 0 to 100. It's about going from 0 to 10. And then once you've got those habits sort of ingrained in your routine, then you go from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40. Too many people trying to go 0 to 100, and it's never going to stick.
Yeah, 100%. I think also people, and this is kind of where I built the model that I work with now. So many of us start with execution. People go to the strategy first and it's about doing, but then they don't actually stop to think, okay, why do I overeat? Because overeating is usually for comfort and struggling with that. And you could say that for any kind of substance or even your phone as to what it relieves for you yourself. So for me, I was getting comfort because my nervous system didn't feel safe. So then it's like, well, you can try and execute all you want, but if your nervous system doesn't feel safe, you're going to keep returning back to that same place. And then you just get really frustrated. And I know because I literally tried to change so many times in my journey and I would lose weight, then I would gain it again and I would lose it and gain it again. And I'm like, I'm a pretty disciplined person. Like I can stick to things very well, but there's only so much you can do in that state. And sticking to it isn't always an option.
Yeah, and the thing is, quite a lot of people go back to those sort of bad habits because a lot of people prefer a familiar hell than an unfamiliar heaven. They would rather be, right, this is what I know makes me feel good in maybe even the short term, but I know it's not good for me. They would rather do that than try and change who they become, knowing that it's going to make them a better person.
100%. And like, I think that falls really down to the pain pleasure kind of, you see it as a seesaw, right? So if someone associates a certain amount of pain to changing, then, and the pleasure to the reward that they're getting at the moment, for example, smoking, they are already thinking in their mind, well, I have loads of pain associated to stopping smoking because I'm going to have these withdrawals. I'm going to think about this. I have already thought about this. And they put pleasure to doing that certain behavior. And so it's pretty simple to actually shift that. You just have to shift, okay, well, what is the pain of continuing this habit? And you just basically change the seesaw. But no, not many people actually just sit down for like 5 minutes to just go through, okay, well, what are the consequences of not changing? Like, what happens to me? Have I thought about that? Or have I just thought about like the short term, oh, it's going to be difficult?
Yeah. And the want to change needs to be stronger than the sort of negative side of whatever it is that you're doing. You've got to then shift that, like you say, you change your identity to become the better person. It's
Uh-huh.
about flipping the seesaw, as you mentioned. But just
Yeah.
going back to your story then, you said that you obviously 18, 19, you moved to Australia. At what point did you then get into the fitness side of things? And what was it that at that point made you sort of want to change yourself?
Yeah. So I moved when I was 19. I was living in the UK on a canal boat in Reading at working for a restaurant, and it was awful. It sounds, "Oh, great, canal boat." It was awful. My room was like, I I can't, like, you wouldn't have been able to fit in the bed that I had because it wasn't even 5 foot, right, this bed.
I would have
I was
definitely struggled.
scrunched up, like, in there. So this is kind of where a lot of my bad habits really started, because I was around a lot of people that were, hospitality environments are rife with people that are struggling in life in general, and you pick up all of these bad habits. And so I had already struggled with my binge eating from quite a young age, actually. So I even though when I was at school, I was used to being fit because I played so much sport. You're so active. But as soon as I stopped doing that, I just started gaining the weight. And it was never like I got to a point where I was really, really excessively overweight. Like I was like 85 kilos, 90 kilos, and I'm now 70. So it wasn't that I was like, whoa, you're huge. It was more, I was so used to being relatively fit. And when I moved to Australia, it was always a niggle in the back of my mind, and I'd tried these fad diets. My mum, that generation that loves
Yeah.
friggin' all of the, like, Cambridge diet and,
Well, I work in
Slimming
an
World.
office, so like I get all of that around me. There's some of the things I
I
hear is shocking.
It's hard not to
Yeah.
get to say
I'm just
something.
like headphones in, just don't
Just
don't react.
don't. Yeah, so my mum was a consultant, like, she did consulting for a bit for Cambridge, and so we thought it was, like, normal to be on these shakes, and so I started, and I remember starting this one diet, isogenics, and it was all these shakes, and I hated it. I lasted 2 weeks, and I was like, "This is miserable, like, I feel so unhappy." And then it was 2017, around that time, I actually found James Smith, which is so rogue because he just started at that point
Oh.
posting online. Yeah, I know James, as well. I've done some jujitsu. I've never actually spoken to him about the fact that it was him that started to inform me about a calorie deficit. And obviously at the start, he was like, I think he had like less than 10,000 followers because he
Oh
was living
wow.
in Australia. He moved to Australia the same year that I did, which I didn't know because, yeah, it was just, we both moved. And so I started like implementing it and seeing results, and I was like, I can eat what I want. I can have the drinks that I want, and I can sort of start enjoying it. And it was kind of just the entry to my personal development journey. And I think so many people do that. They start with fitness because it is the easy start in. It's the surface level problem. Then later down the line, you obviously discover that there's a lot more depth to everything, but at least you can kind of get started and be like, oh, okay, this makes me feel good. I enjoy doing this. And at the beginning, it was a lot of trial and error. Like, I hid in the corner of the gym, petrified of anyone seeing me lift the weights wrong. I remember waiting for everyone to get out of the gym so that I could just go and attempt my squat on the squat rack. Like, I was absolutely petrified. Thinking about it now, it's wild because I wouldn't even think about anything when I go into the gym, even if I'm doing the most boring
Everyone's
thing.
got to start somewhere, haven't they? And
Yeah, exactly.
there's probably people listening to this going, "I'm that person now," but now look at you. You go in and don't think about it.
Yeah, 100%. And like, uh, I remember the feeling of just being so conscious of what other people would think of me and how much of a I would look if I did something wrong. But over time, just the consistency, showing up every day, seeing the results, seeing how different it made me feel, that was kind of the journey. And then that's what I decided with when I invested in a PT when I was out there as well. So I understood, so started to learn how to actually lift weights properly, which I would highly recommend to everyone if you can get a PT for even, a couple of months just to show you how to do the right form. It's so beneficial. And then I would say you can kind of, once like you're done,
Yeah.
um, and then that's when I decided, when I was in Australia, I spent 2 years in Australia, and then I was like, I think I want to go and help other people do this because I feel like more people need to help with this. So then at 21, I traveled home, started my qualification as soon as I got home, and then qualified and went straight into in-person PT. And then obviously COVID happened, so I got forced online very quickly after that.
Yes, it seems like a lot of people moved that way and kind of stayed that way in some aspect or other. So what would you say was the biggest thing that you had to overcome in yourself to get to where you are? Or at least in this stage of your life?
Mm, that's a very good question. I think the main thing is being able to understand that life is happening for you, not to you. And even though you can sometimes not always have the best cards dealt, you get to choose what you do from it and who you show up as a person, whether you choose to victimize yourself or you actually take control of what is in your control and where you go from there. Because I know that when I was younger, that a lot of my anger was the frustration of what I was exposed to and what I had to deal with from a young age. And that was where a lot of my frustration was. And as soon as I kind of let go of that, it made everything else in my life so much more possible and easy to flow.
So I've got a sort of quote that I use, which is kind of from a Stoic quote from Marcus Aurelius, but I say, control the controllable and control your reaction to the uncontrollable, because you essentially can't do anything about it. So don't waste time or energy on it. And that seems to be very much sort of what you're coming from.
Yeah, I've got Marcus Aurelius's journals here actually,
Oh,
but
very nice.
I think it's yeah, like I totally agree with that. It is just I think a lot of the time we are, especially with social media nowadays, we're so focused, and that's a big component, right? The lens that you see the world through. It's your own experiences and your own emotion that you have behind those experiences that's leading that lens. But we are spending so much of our time blaming external factors, which is why so many people feel out of control. Because as soon as you put blame on something else, you're giving them that or that thing the power to your own happiness.
Yes, exactly. You've got to take control of your own identity and your own life and what's happening around you. And like I say, you've got to just control your reaction to what you can't control.
Mm.
We can't control everything in life. Things, like you say, happen to you, and you've
Yeah.
just got to deal with the cards that you dealt. So you obviously have gone into fitness. What is then the transition in November, and why? What was the reason for it?
Yeah, so I kind of just fell out of love with fitness, to be honest. I fell out of love with the fitness industry. I think that there is a lot that is missing in the fitness industry around coaches understanding the like neuroscience behind behavior change. And I think there's too much on execution. Even I had people come to me who had, and this is not to push James Smith, James, sorry. But like people that had gone to, say, for example, coaches like James's or other people that have created these massive platforms with loads of different people, but they've struggled because they haven't actually had the behavior change in their neuroscience understanding behind why they do certain behaviors. So I guess for me, I wanted to go deeper into why people think that way. And what I was finding is a lot of my clients didn't want to necessarily face the depth. Some did, but a lot of them didn't. They were just, I just want to lose weight and I just want to get to this. Whereas I'm pretty like deep person. I enjoy deep conversations. I really enjoy understanding more depth around people. I'm very curious. So it just wasn't fueling me. It wasn't making me feel fulfilled. I kind of was like, well, I feel like anyone could really do this. Which maybe they couldn't, but for me it just wasn't really challenging me anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there these days, which is literally, right, come on board, here's a plan, here's your calories, crack on. And it's a lot more to that. And it's kind of an issue that I've got with people going on GLP-1 medications at the moment. It's very similar, where the fact that you need to change who you are to become a healthier person. If you're cheating it by having a GLP-1, you'll stay in as that same individual mindset wise. You may be in a completely different body, in a slimmer body, but you haven't changed your habits and who you are to be that healthier person going forward once you come off the GLP-1s. And that's quite often why a lot of people rebound and put the weight back on, because mentally they've not changed. Physically, yes, but you've cheated your way there. You've not changed and become that person going forward.
Yeah, there's definitely a place for them, and you do have to have someone working with you alongside it. If you're going to do the GLP-1s and that's what's right for you, and I definitely think there's a place for them in people that have tried or they're really, really stuck or it's a detrimental part to, aspect to their health that they need to act on really quickly. I do think that it's being given out very quickly, but that also tends to happen with pharmaceuticals because obviously it's the profit that it kind of makes in the industry. But you definitely need the identity change. And what you will see over time is people will become very reliant on GLP-1s and they'll just have to keep going back to them every time they gain weight. And then we don't even have the long-term research. Like we don't have the 20-year beyond research, which is pretty wild, to be honest.
But there's reports and studies coming out. I don't know how sort of in depth they are, but I'm seeing the sort of link to turbo cancers at the moment. And like you say, I agree. There are probably a certain, like, very small percentage of people that do probably need them because they're at that overweight that it's at a detriment to the health. And if they don't act, they're going to be in a coffin very soon, to put it bluntly. They're the people that it should be for, not your average overweight person that could change their lifestyle by eating less, drinking less, and moving more. There's too many people out there that are cheating their way to a slimmer body, but not mentally. And it's just going to rebound in the end. Like you say, they're going to just constantly be reliant on it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think on that, people that are doing the GLP-1s as well, it's, if you are doing them, a lot of people are lying about doing them. A lot of people aren't being honest about taking them. So then you have to look at it and be open to the fact that when you're lying and you're not telling the truth about your reality, you are living a lie. So I feel like if people are doing them, own that you're doing them and just say to people, yeah, I'm on GLP-1s. But I have seen a lot of people that when the conversation's brought up and someone's randomly lost loads of weight and you're like, wow, you look really, you look like you've lost weight or you look good or whatever compliment you want to kind of give them. And as soon as the conversation comes up, people kind of shrink themselves and go shy. And then you think, what is that doing to your brain to think I'm living a lie right now because I'm not being honest about it? And I think that's something that people need to own up to and really look at and be like, if I'm going to do it, I need to be open to it. I've definitely had conversations with people close to me who have decided to do them. And to be honest, they actually got to a point where I was like, I genuinely feel like you should try, because they were at a point of being really, really depressed and really struggling with the hips and things like that. But also they were kind of hiding it for people. And I was like, just own it, like fully step into it, own it. And just
I
the
think you
more
can
you own
often
it, the
tell,
better.
can't you? Because the faces go really gaunt first,
Mm.
is what I've noticed. But it's funny because it's very similar to when sort of fitness social media was sort of popping off, probably around 2017, 2018, and you had all those fake natties. So people weren't coming out to say they were on steroids when they're blatantly on steroids, but they were claiming they were a natural athlete. But I've watched quite a few YouTube videos of people that, were big in social media and had big followings. And the reason they said they were not on steroids is because they didn't want to influence the younger generation that were following them to then think, oh, I just need to jump on this, that, and the other, and I'll look like so and so. I think Steve Cook's one of them that said sort of along those lines.
Mm.
Obviously, he's competed bodybuilding. Obviously, he was on something. They're all on something, and even the natural shows are just people that are off cycle. So
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's the main thing about the fitness industry is it's kind of become a bit performative, and it's not now it's kind of we've gone there's just phases. It's like fashion. There's phases to everything. There's CrossFit, then there's High Rocks, then there's health maxing where everyone wants to stick to a schedule that's really strict and not drink and become a little bit obsessive. We just go through all of these cycles through time, and it's just
Yeah.
going to cycle back around.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I hope it goes back to sort of 2016 to 2018 social media for fitness, because that was like the golden era for me. That was the most fun because everyone was actually doing it for fitness stuff. Whereas now you've got this sort of TikTok generation where they're coming through just making content for views, and they're doing stupid stunts in the gym and stupid videos. And I'm just like, I'm
Yeah.
just bored of it. Like, I don't identify myself with them or that anymore. And I'm just like, I go to the gym. I don't even bother filming half the time anymore to even my sessions. I just can't be bothered. And then you've got people faffing about making stupid videos.
Yeah, I know, but I think that's a lot of like social media at the end of the day, and I think that's where it's really tricky because there's that whole comparison game with everyone you're having. It is difficult. I mean, especially I'm grateful that I was didn't grow up with social media. Well, Instagram was not a thing when I was young. It was, I think it came out in like 2015 or something. It was quite fresh.
I think I've had it since about
Something like that.
2012.
2012.
Yeah.
No,
It's older than you think. It's older
I
than you think.
really?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely didn't have it from 2012, I don't think. But even then, it's like it wasn't Facebook was like the thing when you were younger and you turned like 13, you'd be like, "Can I get Facebook now?"
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
there's just nothing that goes on Facebook. Sometimes old statuses pop up, and I'm
Oh,
like, I'm just gonna delete that because I don't know
I've
when
done
that's gonna
so much of that.
bite me in the arse. And I'm like, I promise I'm not homophobic because
Uh,
there's so many different things that have come up where I'm like, oh my gosh, why was that said?
so I was looking actually just before this podcast. It is 14 years ago that I finished high school today, and it is knocking me a little bit sick.
Yeah, makes you feel old.
Yeah, yeah, it does.
It's when kids are like in bars and stuff and their passports like
Oh,
2000, like 2008, and you're like, sorry,
yeah,
what?
yeah. I was in year 8 at school, in high school at that point.
How old are you?
30, just.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm 29, so.
So yeah, a year above. But yeah, we digress. So just just going back to obviously why people end up sort of staying stuck in their old habits. Why do you think so many people know exactly what they should do but never do it?
So it really starts with firstly your overall regulation within yourself. So if you think about your nervous system is created to protect yourself. So our brain's whole purpose is not to make the smart decision, it's to keep you alive. And so if you think about different situations over time, it's learned certain behaviors, your childhood, you pick up situations and then you go to comfort in that time. So that whole process as you go through is learning different strategies to cope with different things. When we feel unsafe in ourselves, we go into a state of essentially fight or flight, you would kind of know it as, right? And so in fight or flight, you can call it tunnel vision. So I always say, if you were to imagine someone chasing you down the street, you're not going to be thinking in that moment, I have that route. I could go down here. Oh, that would take like 20 minutes to go down there. You're thinking, run. Like, I need to get away as fast as possible. So your logical brain is not switched on, it's off, and you're just in survival in that time. So the reason that a lot of people, they want to change but they can't is because they don't necessarily feel safe within themselves to make that change. So if your nervous system goes into a state of feeling unsafe and you don't know how to regulate yourself, you were never taught how to regulate your emotions, you are going to, maybe you do go and do that thing. Say, for example, you want to lose weight and you stick to your calories. And then the moment you feel unsafe, your natural response to feel comfort in that moment is to go and then eat food or go and do something, right? And so that's one component, is just your nervous system and whether it feels safe. And that's the kind of start. What I call it is your presence. So there's 3 factors to it. It's your body posture, which is your embodiment essentially, which is your how you hold yourself. It's how you breathe. It's essentially how you show up as a person. So if you think about people, if they're like shy, they might shrink themselves. our body is actually what changes how we feel in ourselves, not the other way around. A lot of people are like, oh, like, they're just a shy person. You're literally making yourself smaller. If you just bring your shoulders back and make yourself bigger, you'll find you'll feel a lot more confident in yourself, even without doing anything else. And then you have your lens, which is how you perceive the world, which over time you can become a lot more aware of. Essentially what you focus on, you will find what you're looking for. So if you're looking for the bad in situations, if you're looking for things to go wrong, you're going to find them. Okay. And this happens a lot with most people. They go into a situation, they go, oh, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? But they never ask the opposite question. What if it does work? What if I do succeed at that thing? And so it's really teaching yourself how to challenge your own thought process in that moment. Then you have your inner voice, which is self-explanatory in that sense, how you speak to yourself, the language you use. When you do mess up, how do you deal with it? Do you push yourself down and make yourself feel shame? Or do you go, it's okay. It's one little error. We're going to carry on. We're going to keep going. It's not going to ruin everything. So that's the kind of first component of it, is your presence. Then you move on to your identity. Now, this is the part which is the biggest part that people don't actually shift. So we do this in the program that I run, and it's like the identity upgrade. And what we do in this is you have 3 components to this. So you have your belief, the meaning that you've attached to that belief, and the identity you hold. So through time, we basically have experiences. And in those experiences, we experience an emotion, we have a thought around that situation, and that creates an emotion in us. So let's say, for example, someone when you were younger said, oh, why do you wear size 10 trousers and you're like an 8-year-old, right? In that moment, you could have thought to yourself, oh, like, I'm not good enough, I'm fat. And you then feel shame or embarrassment. So you hold on to that. That's then when a belief, an identity has been created. I'm not good enough. Okay, cool. So now you carry that identity. So then when it goes to you actually trying to implement and execute the habit, you're at the back of your mind, your brain's going, hold on, you're not good enough for this. So like as soon as you start doing that thing, your brain's going to go, whoa, you need to return back to this identity because this is where we fall. A bit like a thermostat, right? If it goes above, it's going to drop back down again, right? It's going to regulate. It's literally what your brain does when it comes to an identity. So the reason people don't actually stick to changing is because they still hold this identity and their brain just wants to be right in that moment. So until you actually shift that identity, you just keep looping over and over again.
You've almost got to say, so for me, in an instance, I want to be this version of George. What would that version of George do in this situation? It's not about what does George do now. It's who do I want to become and what does that look like? And does that align with what I want to do? So like you were saying before, people, I don't know, smoke and drink. And does the healthy version of me go for 10 cigarettes a day? Probably not. So let's stop that. And it's about shifting that identity, isn't it? Like you say.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize as well, there is a cost of inaction. So like you mentioned, give yourself the opportunity for it to actually work out. By not taking action, you are going to stay exactly where you are right now. And that is not working for you. So why not at least give yourself the option of it becoming a better situation? Even if it doesn't, and you stay in the same place, at least you gave it the chance.
Yeah. Yeah. And that falls down to really the fear, right? Because people don't change a lot because of the fear. What if I fail? If I try and I'm seen trying and I fail, well, I'm going to look like a loser. Some people, when I grew up, it wasn't cool to try hard at school. So I was like, fucking try hard. Like, why would you try hard? Right.
Nerd.
So you have that belief. Yeah. Nerd. Like, so I literally used to dodge school. Even for my A levels, didn't revise at all. I woke up at 5 a.m. every bloody day for a week just to revise for my biology A level for a 2-year exam. It was just the worst decision I made.
How
but
did
it
that
was
go?
okay. It was okay, to be fair. I got a B. I was quite impressed
Fair
by
play.
that. I was quite impressed by that. And I think everyone else around me was like, okay, I don't know how you've you've haggled that one. But yeah, it's a lot of it is like, the biggest fear that humans have is public speaking over death. So people would rather do die than be in the coffin than actually do the eulogy at a
Mm,
funeral. And that it just falls down to fear of rejection, fear of failure. And that those are people's biggest fears is, if I try and I fail, what happens? Because we're tribal beings. So of course, rejection, even though humans, Homo sapiens, have existed for 300,000 years, our brains aren't actually quick at evolving. Like, they are slow. So our brains are kind of still on the process of, well, if I'm not part of a tribe, I'm going to die. So it's very
yeah.
dangerous for us to actually make those changes. And when you understand that and you start thinking, oh, wow, that's why I do those things, it kind of simplifies the whole process, because you're like, you have a lot more understanding around the mechanism.
The thing is, a lot of people also get caught up on the word failure. For me, you only fail if you quit. And yeah, I've had this conversation a couple of times just this week with people that have messaged me saying, "Oh, I wish I could do content like you do, like put it out there. I don't get how you can just, speak to camera." I'm like, well, I started my fitness Instagram in 2018. I've done YouTube. This is episode 121 of my podcast. I've got countless hours of practicing and messing up. I said I used to do a video on my story. It would sometimes take me 5 or 10 goes to get a story. Even now, there's times where I mess up and I, go again. And I literally just turned around and said, right, you're scared of putting stuff out there because of what? And they were like, oh, what if like no one watches it? I was like, no one's seen it. So who cares? Like,
But people, I always think like people are too in their own head around what other people think.
yeah,
And even, if you actually, the perspective that I help shift in my own mind, because if people become depressed a lot of the time because they are so self-absorbed in how they look and how they come across. And that's what leads to a lot of unhappiness, because as human beings, we do well by helping people and serving and actually being of help. So if you can ask yourself, how can I help someone else? How can I serve someone else? How can I go about my day and get to know someone else and be more curious about what another person's life is? Life just gets better because you're less focused on what you look like, on how you come across. And in that moment, the only reason people get social anxiety is because you're too in your head about how you're coming across, rather than actually being curious about the person you're speaking to right in front of you.
yeah, exactly. People get too hung up on what other people think of them when quite often nobody really cares. Like I used to get messages off my mates going like, "Oh, why are you doing this content?" Because at 2018, fitness content wasn't really a thing. So like, what are you doing? It's a waste of time. And then all of a sudden, I got sponsored by My Protein, and I've got this, that, and the other. And I was at my mate's kid's christening a couple of weeks ago, and one of the lads turned around and he was like, "I wish I could do what you do." Like, because I've started doing an episode on the podcast now called Adult Show and Tell, which is basically where I get me and a couple of mates around the table and we come with like topics that we've just seen in the news and just have a general chat. He's like, "Oh, I wish I could come on." I was like, "What's stopping you?" He's like, "Oh, I just can't do it." And I'm like, "But you can. It's just me and the lads having a chat and there's a camera over there. You zone out."
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, too many people get caught up on it. And like I was saying, I had the conversation with two people, separate people yesterday. I said, "Well, what's the reason that you want to put this content out there?" And they were saying, "Oh, I want to speak to like-minded people. I want to help people." And I was like, "Right, if you help one person with your videos, then it's doing the job, isn't it?" And they're like, "Yeah, I guess so." And I was like, "Well, I want to see a video up today." And they're like, "No, maybe by the end of the week." And I was like, "But then you're just going to overthink it even more. So just get it out there. And if it
Yeah.
reaches no one, no one's seen it. So who cares?"
God, if anyone wants to laugh, just scroll down to the bottom of my bloody start of my
Same.
Instagram now. Honestly, it's awful. I've gone back and I've literally wanted to curl inside. I'm like, what even was that? And it's just, but you have to get the reps in, because at the end of the
Yes,
day, it's not cringe until it works. And until
exactly.
people are like, oh wow, you're actually able to you know, when I started doing what I did, maybe not many people really said it to my face about what I was doing, but I definitely know people would have said it behind my back.
I had a lot of
Uh,
that.
for sure, like people just naturally do. But like thinking about it, I know people around me are like, oh, you literally have been able to support you and your partner and go traveling and live abroad. I'm like, yeah, you know, so much comes out of it if you just bet on yourself and you just take that leap, because really playing it safe is just as much of a risk, if not more, than if you actually just bet on the life that you truly want to thrive towards.
Well, if you're suppressing what you want to do, then you're not living authentically. You're not living the way you want to actually live. If you want to go and do something, just go do it. Life's too short to not do the things that you want to do that make you happy.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had people saying like, why are you starting a podcast? No one's going to listen to it and blah, blah, blah. And now, like I was saying, I'm an affiliate with Neutonic. I'm sponsored by My Protein. There's like things that have happened and I've spoke to people that I would never have came across in my life. I had George from the Tin Men on, who's been on Chris Williamson's podcast 4 times. Spoke to people in America, Australia, New Zealand, France. Like I've spoke to all these people because I just started talking to a camera and
Yeah.
opportunities open.
That's how it all started, though. Look at all of the, you know, look at Chris Williamson's friggin' first in the day. Back in the day, his podcast was just in a room, just like looked shit. And
Yeah.
now he's got like the most insane production going.
Well, that'd be so like the people I was speaking to yesterday about creating content. It would be like me comparing myself to Chris Williamson. I'm still in my spare room. Yes, I might have a camera and like a fairly all right home setup, but it's nothing compared to what he does. But he's
Yeah.
also done 1,200 episodes. He's
Mhm.
done 10 times the amount of episodes. It would be
Yeah.
stupid for me to be sat here going, oh, I wish I could speak like Chris Williamson. But because I can't, I'm not going to hit record. I'm not going to do a podcast. It'd
Yeah.
be absolutely ridiculous. But if you go back to episode 1 through probably to 20, it is awful compared to what it is now.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
there's progress. And it, like you say, it is just putting the reps in.
Yeah, for sure.
But people set goals that are too big that they actually fear starting.
Yeah. People very frequently overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So would you say people are more afraid of failure or are they more afraid of change?
I would That's quite a difficult one to say, to be honest, because they kind of go hand in hand really with it. I mean, it really depends as well on like someone's human needs, because there's like 6 human needs that we have, and the first 4 are kind of fundamental to someone's happiness, which is certainty, which is essentially comfort, it's routine, consistency. Then you have variety, which is adventure, hobbies, starting new things, challenges, right? Then there's significance, which is just being of significance to someone or something, being important. And then there's love and connection. So those are like the foundational ones. And then you have the fulfillment kind of external too, which is your growth and contribution, which is where most people miss out on, because a lot of people aren't actually growing in today's society, because a lot of corporate jobs don't allow for much room for growth. Sometimes they're capped at where their possibilities are. And then contribution is, a lot of jobs aren't contributing to anyone at all. So then people don't fully feel fulfilled. The majority of Western society don't feel fulfilled. So if you have 2 top primary needs that you will want, obviously you need all of them, but there will be 2 primary ones. So for me, certainty it tends to be quite common that people have certainty. For me, I like variety because I'm very ADHD, but certainty is like, I need routine. Otherwise, my brain will fucking just be on a different planet and I'll just be doing anything that I see. I'm like, oh, look at that. I'm like the worst person with shiny object syndrome. I started trying to learn how to sing the other day. I was like, to my partner, I was like, look, I've downloaded the singing app, so I'm going to teach myself how to sing. And I'm like, I'm not good at singing. But, you know, I thought I'd give it a go. That's done now. We're on to the next thing.
Oh, I need to see some videos on your story of you singing.
Oh, honestly, I don't think I'm at that point. I did the funniest thing. This is the funniest thing because I watched the Michael Jackson thing and I became, that's also another thing
Everyone's
that happened.
obsessed.
I become low-key obsessive. I was always obsessed with Michael Jackson though. I'm an old school fan. Like I remember when he like died, my mum's like born 2 years after him. So she's like, you know, she was absolutely knew everything about them. Anyway, I went down this whole bloody Michael Jackson just loophole of just never ending. And I was then educating my mum on him. But I was just watching that and I was like, I'm going to learn how to sing. Like apparently everyone can train themselves to sing. I recorded it for the thing and I put earphones in so that I had the music and I was like, I really wanted to sing Michael Jackson. So
Oh
I
god.
was singing Human Nature, right? Really, really fucking awful song to sing. And I put my earphones in. So I just had Michael Jackson playing and then I recorded just to see what my actual, what my actual voice was. Oh my God. I honestly, I listened and I was like, no, that's not being
Delete.
seen by anyone. Just delete. That was awful. And I felt like it was really good because when you listen to someone at the same time that is good, you feel like you are them.
Yeah.
You're not. No.
No, especially Michael Jackson as well.
No, worst person, but I just love his music. So
You
I
would think that he's only just sort of hit the charts, though, wouldn't you? Like everyone's obsessed with him all of a sudden.
isn't
I'm
it
like,
wild?
he's been
It's
around for like
crazy.
40 years. Like,
It's like, yeah, it's friggin' that whole, but that's also what interested me with him as well, because he did a lot of identity work. So his mentor as a whole, he used to read a lot of Tony Robbins.
all
And
right.
Tony Robbins is like a mentor of mine. I learn a lot of the stuff that I've developed and understood around myself from Tony Robbins. And he used to read a lot of Tony Robbins' books. So how he has those different things, I don't know if you've seen like the manifestation stuff. He basically used to every single day say in the mirror to himself, world's greatest entertainer of all time. And he would just say, greatest entertainer of all time. And he would repeat it to himself. And his, journals and stuff were just full of identity, like affirmations that he would say in real time, like as if he had already done it. And so that's also, obviously, he was insanely talented, but he understood that he had to become before he did. Like
Right.
he had to believe in himself that he was that person before he did, because the science behind it shows that your brain, if you can train your brain to actually believe something around an affirmation, that's how it's kind of works, is you believe it so many times, you repeat it to yourself so many times over and over again, that over time you start acting out as that person and
So
you start becoming that person.
that's a really important thing because I was going to touch on affirmations and all of that sort of manifestation stuff really annoy me at times on social media because just by saying something's going to do absolutely nothing, you've got to take
Yeah.
action on the back of it.
Yeah.
You can't just, like Tony Robbins was in the mirror saying like world's greatest entertainer. That's not going to make him the greatest entertainer.
Yeah.
By him going out and taking action to become that is what happens. And
100%.
too many people get caught up in, oh, you need to journal and write your affirmations down and what you're grateful
Yeah.
for in the day. And I'm like, that does not a lot. Like it might clear your mind at the end of the day, but for you hitting your goals and getting to where you want to be without taking action, it's doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely misunderstood. I'd say it's more misunderstood than actually useless. It's
Mm.
super effective if you do it in the right way. So the one
Yeah,
thing that I
I'm
find
not
with
saying
clients, right?
it's useless. I'm saying
No,
just
but that's
writing
what
it
I
down
mean.
and doing nothing. Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's what I mean is like people do it completely wrong. So
yeah.
what I see a lot of people do, and a lot of clients that come to me are like, well, I've tried affirmations, and I'm like, okay, well, what did you say to yourself? And they're like, I'm confident. And I'm like, well, do you believe that you're confident? And they're like, no. So I'm like, well, you're lying to yourself then. So how is your
Mm.
brain going to believe a lie? So
Yeah, what are you
essentially,
doing to become
when
confident? Like,
yeah, but it's not even like what are you doing yet, because the part of you becoming confident is also obviously the action side of it. But in order for your brain to believe something, it has to be believable to your brain. So if you are not confident and you're insecure as fuck and you're saying to yourself, I'm confident, you're looking yourself dead in the eye and your brain's going, That's not right. So
Yeah.
like instead of saying something that is not believable, it's like me being like, I'm bigger than Tony Robbins, right? In my brain right now, I'm nowhere near that level of success, right? So my brain would be like, that's not true. I have to meet something that is relatively believable in my state right now that will also push me. So what I do with my clients is I get them to understand like what are their disempowering beliefs. So these are the beliefs that they have that are currently holding them back. They'll write them down like, I'm never good enough. I never follow through with anything. These are all your disempowering. They're pulling you down. They're weighing you down. Then I get them to write down the top 5 empowering beliefs. So these are, what evidence do you have on these beliefs that your brain actually believes? So it could be, well, I'm a kind person. I always show up for the people around me. Or, I am starting to implement change in my life and I'm following through. And so those are the slight changes. It's not just like I'm confident. It's like, what is going to be believable for where you are right now to get you to that place, rather than just shouting an affirmation in the mirror, hoping it's going to fucking land when it's not. Right? Like Michael Jackson could say that to himself, I'm the greatest entertainer of all time, because he was already 21 years old. He'd already done an album. He already was being known for like one of the most well-known kids. He was a millionaire by the age of 10, so he was close to that thing anyway.
He was walking the walk, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But it's like Alex Hormozy says, isn't it? It's about building that stack of proof that says you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
Like you say, if
Yeah.
you're saying I'm confident, but in real life you're actually not, and you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're just lying to yourself. You've not got the stack of proof behind it to say I am this person.
Yeah, for sure.
So how much of who we generally are is sort of us, and how much of it is conditioning and upbringing and experience?
How much of us is who
Just
we
sort of
actually
who we genuinely is
okay.
us, and how much of us is sort of conditioning, environment, and upbringing experiences.
I mean, for the vast majority of people, it's conditioning and upbringing, because until you have done a significant amount of work, and it isn't ongoing, it's ongoing. Like I'm every single day, every single development in my life, there's a different challenge that I am exposed to that pulls out a different kind of insecurity or belief that I had about myself, where I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay, I'm feeling this, and it becomes a lot faster. But I would say for the vast majority of people, they're living off of the learned behaviors that they've had over time. If you think about a kid that's adopted, it's nurture over nature. It's not about, the vast majority is like your genetics load the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger. So every single thing that you've done in your, and from ages 4 to 7 is when the brain is most susceptible to take on beliefs and
Yeah,
be conditioned in that place, which is why I always think like when people's got, toddlers and stuff, I'm like, you have to be really aware of
they're a
how
sponge,
you.
aren't they?
Oh, my nieces and nephews, I say something and they just like repeat it back to me. And I'm like, oh God, I have to be really aware of like what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, the language I use, because their brains are so impersonable. And a lot of people forget that and they just think, oh, they're just young, they won't understand it. It's like, no, they are literally loading things as you say it, but their little brain, the difference is their brain hasn't learned how to emotionally regulate yet. That's the difference between children and adults, right? Human brain doesn't stop developing until 25. So you're going through that experience, and children don't know how to emotionally regulate. So if you never learned how to emotionally regulate, at some point in your life, you are going to have to. And that's where I think it's also really important to understand that we all start at different points, depending on our childhood, but also depending on how intense that trauma has felt for us. Someone could have what's deemed as very little traumatic experience, but it was traumatic to them. Someone
Yeah,
else could have had the most severe. They could have seen, someone get murdered in front of them, and their brain, they didn't perceive it as traumatic, and their brain didn't load it and make it mean something about themselves. So that's where I think it's really important conversation to kind of have. And in the environment now is people don't really understand what trauma means. They think, oh, trauma means you've actually had a really significant upbringing that was really bad. it very much depends on person to person. It's like very individual to someone's experiences.
It's very individual, but I would also say at the same time, people are using the word trauma too freely almost at times. People are almost glamorizing the fact that they've had trauma when in some instances it isn't that traumatic. I know you're saying it depends on individuals and it could be traumatic to some and not others. But I think a lot of people are saying, like, I don't know, they've had a breakup or something, which happens to pretty much anyone in a lifetime. Yes,
Yeah.
some can be really bad, but generally most breakups aren't that bad. And they're like, oh, it was traumatic or it's toxic. And people are using these terms far
Yeah.
too freely. Like the barrier to trauma or barrier to toxic relationship seems to be extremely low.
Yeah. I think on that, it's a really interesting subject because I do think people are using these new flashy words of narcissism and gaslighting and stonewalling. And what's really difficult is when you actually have had, say, for example, a narcissistic person in your life and you are having to navigate that, and then people are just throwing it around like everyone friggin' has it. It's like
Yeah.
we all have narcissistic traits. It's quite normal to accidentally manipulate someone or gaslight someone. It's actually a very normal response in an argument. I have done it many times where I'm like, I didn't say that. And they are actually normal behaviors, but where social media has become so intense and rife on those factors, it's almost become very popular to do this, and everyone then is going, oh, this person's narcissistic. I remember I did a TikTok. It's the first time I opened my TikTok account, and it was the first video I ever did, and it went viral. It got 4.5 million views, right?
Wow.
And it was just a skit. It was me going over to my friend who was using a bar pad on a barbell for a squat. And I went over and I pushed her off of it and I kicked the bar pad. And it was like when you walk into the gym and see someone squatting with a bar pad.
Wow.
And it was like obviously like a bit of banter. I literally got called narcissistic, like all of these things. And because I was quite young at the point, I think I was like 20, 22, whatever. I still hadn't kind of developed my confidence in myself with it. I just stopped posting on TikTok, and I probably could have done really well because it gained me like 2,500 followers in that instant straight away. And I was like, wow, TikTok's fucking easy. Never been able to like get a video like that ever again. And so we are just throwing around these terms like they're kind of fashionable.
It
And
takes it away from the people who are actually struggling with it as well. And you kind of alluded to it before with the sort of doctors give out medication far too freely. I find that again is very similar with depression. Depression gets chucked around very easily. And I think if I went into the doctors on a bad day, like maybe I just had a bad day, they'd probably turn around and go, yeah, you're depressed, here's some antidepressants. And it
yeah,
takes it away from the people who are genuinely depressed and struggling.
yeah.
Someone, yeah, quite a lot of people just need to get off the couch and get to the gym and eat better. And that would solve most people's issues, I would think.
100%. 100%. It's a lot of people, it's a lack of like want to try. And people, the thing is, when you think about the human needs that I was talking about earlier, is human needs can be met negatively or positively. So when someone gossips or they victimize themselves, that victimizing will be linked to significance. It also would be love and connection because you go and you're like, oh, this happened to me and like, this is really shit. So the more human needs something is meeting, the harder it is to break that behavior and that
Yeah.
pattern. And I used to do it. I used to talk about my childhood and my relationship with my dad and all of these things. And I just would ruminate in these same things. And then I realized that was the one thing that was holding me in that current identity that I was in. And I was feeding off of that. And that's what so many people do with depression. The reason a lot of people don't change. I grew up, my mum was severely depressed all of my childhood, essentially. And, you know, I look at that and I'm like, there's a difference between chronic depression and just feeling depressed. Like
Yeah.
one's an emotion that's just, the other is chronically, continuously going on every single day. Like depression doesn't look like, oh, I'm just in a low mood. It looks like you can't get out of bed. And my mum used to not be able to get out of bed. She would take me to school and she would hide in the car and she would beg that no one saw her. Like, you don't want to live or know someone that is deeply depressed, because it's not what we make out. Like, no one's going on social media fucking putting a video up of themselves crying and being like, oh,
That
like when I was freaking in my lowest state and I literally was suicidal, I could not think of anything worse than showing my face on social media. Like, I don't know how it's become this way.
I don't get the craze of putting your phone up, hitting record, and sitting there crying. Why do so many people do it? Like,
No, I know.
what? What? I genuinely, if I was that, like you say, if you were in that bad of a position, the last thing you are doing is you're thinking, oh, I'll make some content off the back of this. It isn't. It's not even going to be on your mind, is it?
No, it's wild. It
So
is wild.
going back to the sort of how much of us is genuinely us and sort of what's coming from conditioning, do you think because of it mainly being environment, do you think that someone can completely reinvent themselves if they want to?
Yeah, 100%. If they are placed in the right environment, I would say environment is very important. Like, they did studies on the American soldiers, veterans that were in Vietnam, and they all got addicted to opioids, heroin.
Yeah.
And when they returned back to the States, none of them were addicted, even though it is the most addictive substance pretty much that there is in terms of drugs. Um, so that's a huge factor. Environment is going to play a huge role. A lot of people struggle to change if they're in the same environment. Obviously, it is very dependent person to person, but like, your environment is key. Like, your partner, how supportive your partner is in that situation, your home and what is familiar for you in that home, the trigger points, because essentially habits are just looped through a trigger. So you see the trigger, it then triggers. Like, why do people, it took me 4 years to fucking stop vaping, and I didn't even smoke before that. And the reason it took so long is because I was going through significant amount of stress within my family. It was kind of a clutch that I just was
Yeah.
comfort to me. And I was like, I can just go out and I can just toke on this thing the whole time. And I would feel shit. I'd feel shit after, while I was doing it. Sometimes at the start, I'd be like, why am I doing this? But like, until something has changed in your situation, sometimes it's incredibly difficult to make those changes.
Well, there's a reason the saying is you are the average of the five people that you spend the most time around. If you are
Yeah.
like you were saying before, when you're in Australia, you sort of turn to drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. If the people around you are doing those things, the likeliness is you are going to also be doing those things. If you
Hmm.
surround yourself by, say, for instance, successful people with businesses,
Mm.
chances are you might get dragged along the way and you might
Yeah.
end up being in a better position. And it is about like what I was saying before. If I want to be this version of George, what is that version of George doing? Who is he hanging around with? What actions
Mm.
is he doing? And if you sit there and question your sort of routine, your habits, and they don't align, then you've got to stop them to become the person you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's a
Yeah, for
lot,
sure.
it sounds a lot easier than it is. Obviously, doing it is a completely different thing, but you've just got to ask yourself those questions. If you want to become a healthier person and you sat there on a vape or smoking, look at it and go, right, is this going to be who I am in 6 months' time? If it's no, chuck it in the bin.
Yeah.
Start from there.
You do have to, I think that is the biggest thing though, isn't it? Really, like, when you think about it, if you, every situation, obviously the regulation comes first, but in those situations where you really want to go back to comfort, it's asking yourself, who would this person be that is actually going to act from that positive place? Like, who is going to, what would this person do right now? And getting that information for yourself as backup of like, how would I behave in that situation?
What would you say the difference between changing your behavior is and changing your identity?
So, changing your identity always comes before changing your behavior. Changing your behavior is actually changing the neural pathways between in your brain. So, if you think about the beliefs that we hold and your identity, all it's being created essentially is your brain is firing new neurons. So neurons that fire together wire together. So the more times we fire specific thoughts about ourselves, the stronger those become. So you can think of it like a strand of hair. one fire. As soon as you fire more and more and more, it becomes thicker and thicker and stronger and harder to break, which is why over time it takes that to build. So your identity is the foundation of a behavior changing. Whereas the behavior is just doing the thing. The behavior is just the thing that you're doing to show up and implement. It's not actually, you can do a behavior and not have shifted your identity on a neurological level. You're just going to keep returning to that. And likewise, in terms of that, you could have really strong willpower that would keep you going in a behavior for bloody ages, and it takes a while for you to return back to that identity again. So it's just the neurological level versus the actual physical pattern.
Would you say that's why then people self-sabotage?
Yeah, self-sabotaging is just basically where your brain and the action that you're doing are misaligned. So your brain says one thing, like, I'm not good enough, and then you're showing up and earning loads of money, and your brain's like, well, you aren't good enough to actually accept that,
Right.
right? And that's why you then sabotage it. Or, for example, it happens a lot in relationships. If someone believes that they're not good enough or they're not going to find love, someone good comes into their life and straight away they just start sabotaging it. They find any issue in that relationship. Subconsciously, they don't even know they're doing it, but that's just basically what self-sabotage is.
So what would you say self-sabotage is actually protecting us from?
It is your brain trying to align the story that it knows to be true. So survival, again, it falls down to the survival. Your brain is designed to be right and to keep you alive. So if it believes a story about itself, then it's going to, anything outside of that is going to be wrong. And so it's going to return you back to that. So it's just comfort in that moment. It's familiarity. That's why it's so difficult to change, because we like being unfamiliar, putting yourself into the uncomfortable is very unnatural for us. Like, you actually have to force yourself to go and do that thing and trust that it's going to kind of work. But you have to step into that to see the growth, which is why so many people just stay in comfort.
I heard a quote that I actually made a video on TikTok, and it was by Raina Maria Rilke. And it was, the purpose of life is to be defeated by bigger and bigger things. So again, it links into comfort zones and stepping outside the comfort zone. The more often you do it, the bigger that comfort zone gets,
Yeah.
and the greater the thing that it defeats you further on the line. So the whole point is expanding that comfort zone so that the thing that defeats you is even bigger and bigger and bigger each time.
Yeah. And it never, like, that's what's really interesting is the more successful and the more developed you become, things don't get easier for you. The problems actually become bigger. It's just you become better at handling those situations. And there's the really cool image of like your comfort zone. Obviously, if you think about your comfort zone, and then you have 4 layers. So you have your comfort zone as one, you then have fear zone. This is when you step out of your comfort zone, you're in this place of fear. You're like, oh, I feel really uncomfortable in this place. I have no idea what I'm doing. You're very susceptible to judgment and opinions. This is where things are very easy to change. For example, if you just started your podcast and someone goes, why are you starting a podcast? In that moment, that's probably going to be your highest moment of whether you just fall back or you actually push on. Then you have your learning zone, which is when we start developing ourselves. We start being like, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm developing new skills. I'm kind of getting a hang of it. You're probably somewhat between this and then you have your growth zone. So you're probably between that. The growth zone is when you start really finding your purpose, you find your place, the dreams start coming true and you start shifting. And then once you've made that bigger, you're essentially put your comfort zone from this to out here where the growth zone stretches, and then it begins again and
Yes.
just keeps growing.
That's it. The more often we step outside the comfort zone, the bigger it becomes and the more growth that we experience
Yeah.
along the way, which is, again, what I was saying to the people that were speaking about making content. I said, make a video every day. And they're like, what? I can't do that. And I was like, I don't even know where to start. And I was like, right, go to ChatGPT and say, I want to speak about this, this, and this. Give me my next 10 or 20 video ideas. And they're like, oh, I didn't even think about doing that. I'm like, use AI. Like, if you're struggling for ideas, there's plenty out there. And I
Or
was like,
literally just like
make a video a day.
when you're walking along thinking about something that really annoys you, do a video on it.
Yeah.
Because those are the best videos. I did a video on fucking how people come up to my dog and just think that they can just stroke him. And he's like a 55 kilo massive dog. And I'm like, what happens if he wasn't keen on people stroking him and then he tried to then bite you? He's not going to, because he's like the biggest sop ever and wants attention from everyone. But like, you're not addressing me and saying, would you mind if I stroke your dog? Which I let everyone, I don't have an issue with it. But I'm also like, that popped off because people were like, I was entitled because I wanted people to ask to stroke my dog. And I was like, what? So it is, that's what I've learned as well. It's like, you think about something that really irritates you or something that you're like, oh, I can't believe people do that or whatever. Those are the best kind of videos
Yeah,
because you're like
definitely.
amped up.
Yeah, I made one actually last year. I've done it a few times actually because it's happened a few times. Whenever I go for my morning walks, I always say good morning to people. And I went out for this walk and literally people would just put their head down and carry on walking. And I made a video about it and everyone's like, you're so entitled that people should say hello to you. And I was like, no, it's just basic manners. Like I'm walking past someone,
Common courtesy.
I'll just like, morning. But like literally that's it. Like to put your head down and like not even acknowledge that I'm walking past you was
And
mental to
people
me.
wonder why they're friggin' depressed and miserable.
Yeah, exactly. And then, that was another one I did. I think it was like October time, but it was quite a hot October. It was like 16, 17 degrees outside. And for me, that's shorts and t-shirt if I'm going for a walk. Someone walked past. I'm not even messing. Big winter coat, hat, scarf, gloves. The world's gone mad. And everyone kicked off. They were like, oh, well, what if they've got a health condition? I was like, and then they were putting these really obscure health conditions that a very minute population have. And they're like,
Always the
what if
case.
they have this? I've got this. And I was like, for you to assume that they've got that is crazy. Like the chances are very small. They're probably just a
But
gem.
people always want to be offended, don't they? It's like
Yeah.
another one of those things, again, human needs. But like, it's like that Ricky Gervais sketch when there's like he talks about there being a guitar lesson like leaflet on the door and someone calls up and be like, I don't fucking want guitar lessons. And he's like, don't fucking call me then. Like, why are you calling me? And it is literally that when people watch posts on social media and they make it about themselves. Like
Yeah.
I see stuff. I saw a woman do this post about like Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, being like, you know, you're not a mother. You talk about getting up at this time, which he doesn't. It was a lie. But I'm like, maybe his podcast is just not for you. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just not for you in your time in your life. And we have to understand that everyone's speaking to different people. Like I'm speaking to high achievers and people that are really ambitious. I'm not speaking to the people who are at the pit of their mental health journey. Like you have to pick an audience who you best can work with because you're not going to have everyone work with how you work. It's just impossible.
Yeah, no, exactly. And going back to one of the videos I actually did, it made me laugh. I was up in Newcastle and I was working and I thought I'm going to keep up my morning walks whilst I'm there just because otherwise I'm in the office and then I'm out for food with everyone. And again, I said good morning to people and I said, oh, I thought Newcastle was supposed to be a friendly city. I've said hello to like 5 people and no one's replied. And I said it on the quayside, which is a busy place, but I've recorded the video in a quieter part and they were like, there's no one even around, what you on about? Or they obviously weren't Geordies that you were speaking to. They were uni students or they were immigrants. I was like, how do you know? Like, you're getting offended. Like, they're like, Newcastle is a very friendly place. And I was like,
Well, it's not that fucking friendly, is it, mate?
I was like, you, for one, they were like, when they said about it, no one being about, I said, you are basing a half an hour walk on a 10-second video.
Yeah.
And I was just,
It's wild. It's
I was
wild.
like,
It's getting
geez,
worse.
you're getting so
I feel like
offended.
I feel like it's getting worse over time. Like
Hmm.
people, there's every single thing that you do, there's something that someone can get deeply offended by.
I'm not complaining though, because it's helping me with the algorithm. Because as soon as they start commenting on it all the time, it just reaches more and more people. So I'm like,
Yeah, do it.
bring the hate, come on.
Do it.
Yeah. So going back to then change, what would you say actually creates lasting change?
Lasting change, it will essentially be created by first knowing exactly why you want to change. And the why is the absolute foundational aspect to getting you to that result. Because if you're just wanting to change for a surface level reason, like, it has to be a big enough reason to put you through that pain. Like that saying of like the pain of staying the same has to be greater than the pain of change. So you have to create that leverage to make something important. If you were to imagine someone holding a frigging gun to your head and they told you you need to make this change right now. You need to go on stage to 1 million people and talk. I guarantee every single fucking person is going to make sure that they go and do that talk in front of that many people. Like, so it's the leverage you create to that situation is the foundational aspect to it. And then the rest of that is like the goes through the same process of what I spoke about. So starting off with your nervous system regulation and learning how to actually regulate your nervous system so that you can feel safe, and knowing that how to bring yourself back down to that grounding through your embodiment, your posture, everything, your lens, your inner voice. Then shifting and going on to your identity change. Like, you have to shift your identity. You can't just keep going and expect yourself to change. It has to be a daily thing. The way that I would say is best to work through this to actually see long lasting change is every single freaking morning that you wake up, go and sit with yourself and visualize yourself for 5 to 10 minutes achieving your goals as if they are already done then and there. Because our brain doesn't know the difference between a memory and something actually happening in real life. So you can train your brain to believe, and this is where it can work against you as well, because if you keep, reminiscing and ruminating in a traumatic experience, you put your nervous system into that state of feeling shock and scared and things like that. You can do that with visualization. So Jim Carrey used it, Michael Jackson. There's so many celebrities, Matthew McConaughey, that you will look into that have used visualization to place themselves in that. If you do that every single day and you actually say it to yourself in your mind, you visualize it, then going and doing the execution is going to feel a lot easier. Because if you're working on yourself every single day, every single morning, you're putting yourself into a regulated state and feeling good. Then you go to the visualization. When you go to execute the thing, you're going to be in a way better place to go and do the thing. The problem is people are starting their day not even thinking about their goal. They're not thinking about the preparation. Everything's in the preparation. If you fail to prepare to fail. That's why that saying exists. If you don't sharpen the axe before you cut down the tree, you're probably going to be there your whole bloody life trying to cut this thing down. So essentially, starting with the reason why and making it an absolute must that you have to achieve that thing. It can't just be should. It has to be, I must make this happen.
So if someone listening is feeling completely stuck right now, where should they start?
I would start with what they currently desire in their life, what they actually want. A lot of people, when I get this question, I ask people, they start listing what they don't like and what they don't want. So people naturally veer to the negative. Start with what you actually want and then work backwards. Like, start with your end goal. What is your dream desire? Is it, I want to lose 20 kilos, or I want to earn 10 grand a month? I want to set up a podcast, whatever it is. And then start working backwards from there. Okay, what are the behaviors that I need to do? What's the identity of the person that is that person? What does it require to become that person on a day-to-day basis to regulate that state? And then you can then follow that forward. So it's really about like finding one outcome to your situation. A lot of people tend to go wrong and overwhelm because they just try and think of loads of things they want to change. I can guarantee if you pick the one most painful area in your life and you just start with that and work backwards, everything else will start changing in your life just naturally.
Yeah, it's about grabbing the low hanging fruit sometimes, isn't it? Just take the easy ones, take the easy wins. And I've seen actually a bit of a trend of this sort of thing where people are putting these prompts into ChatGPT where it's basically, I want to be this person or this job or whatever it is. Show me what a day in the life looks like. This is who I am at the moment. How do I sort of bridge the gap and do it, and it'll give you like this whole spiel of like how you
Mm,
change that. Obviously, it's probably better working with someone like yourself, but if
mm.
you've not maybe got the funds to do that, uh, this is potentially a good option as well. There's plenty
Yeah,
of them coming up on social media, and it
I think
basically shows you how to get from where you are to where you want to be.
yeah. Yeah, and I think on that, like, with AI, get the prompts from AI if you want to, because that's, probably if you can't work with, I think a lot of people can invest in themselves and should at some point, definitely. I'm constantly investing in myself. God, I've invested a ridiculous amount of money on my own journey, and I wouldn't do what I do today if I hadn't, because I believe that investing is the most powerful asset. Really, the biggest investment you will ever make is your own personal development, because it's the foundation to everything that you happens in your life, your business, your relationship, your health. But write down, because your brain processes
Yes.
things very differently through pen to paper. And the problem that we're having with AI and computers is everyone's getting things done for them. And I was guilty of this, to be honest. I went on a AI, like, I had to put myself on an AI like halt, and it's been better using Claude now, because ChatGPT just gives you answers, whereas Claude actually asks you about what you're trying to do
Right.
rather than.
Okay.
So Claude is yeah, my friend got me into Claude. He's like a Claude expert. He does like cohorts and stuff on Claude. But Claude's incredible. And I had to give myself a break, because pen to paper and doing the work initially is the best way
Yes.
to actually digest stuff. Like, yeah, if you're going to do a day in life, you're going to work it out that way. I think that's a really cool idea, but just write it down.
Yeah, no, I would agree. But I still, with work, I have tick lists. I have a big whiteboard and a smaller whiteboard in my bedroom, which is like spider diagrams of all sorts of like how I'm going to do this and get to this and that and the other. I would definitely agree with that one, like writing it down yourself. I think there's memory wise as well. I think you are 80% more likely to memorize it if you write it down than if you were to just sort of have it in a conversation.
It's wild, because you have mind muscle connection as well, and people forget, like, your hands muscle. Your
Yeah.
brain's having to like log exactly what you're doing. And now you go on your phone and it's guessing what you're writing half the time. Like, I don't even have to bloody try. I just know it's gonna correct me with
Yeah.
everything that I'm trying to write. Like, sometimes I'm just like, I don't even like sometimes the spelling is awful. Like, I'm just bleh, and it's just guessing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that can get dangerous.
Yeah, very.
So, for one last question, then, what is one thing that you'd want people to remember from this conversation?
Mm. I would say to always reflect inward at what you can change with the resources and things that you have, as opposed to look at what the issues are around you. Because if you can do that, then you can change anything. And ultimately, if you can change anything, then your life can improve.
Perfect. Perfect way to end a great conversation. Grace, what can we expect from you in the short term or long term? Is there anything that we should look out for?
Oh, I've got a lot of goals. I do want to put out there, I want to really grow my socials, because I would love to start doing seminars and doing more in-person events. That's a big goal of mine. And obviously
Me and you
growing a
both.
following. Yeah, growing a following is part of that. And we can put it down to luck, but you also just have to just grit away and see what works, and go with that. And hopefully more podcasts and things as well. Like, I enjoy being on podcasts. I've also would like to start one just for people on day-to-day life in general, starting that. And I'm also starting a free school community, which I'm getting up and running. So people that don't necessarily aren't ready to jump fully into my coaching, I'm going to create a little platform with just basic things to understand around sort of things that we've spoken about today, so that people can just get started with what they need to.
Amazing. Yeah, like going back to it, I also want to do sort of an in-person live podcast. And I wanted to do this before we went to Michael Smoke. And then after it, I was like, I really want to do one. And it's just the logistics. Like you say, you need the following to make it worth it. There is a small community centre near mine that seems to be doing a lot of events at the moment and things like bands and like open mic nights, and I was wondering whether I could do something with them, because I actually, funny enough, used to go to a pre-nursery school there, and I also used to go to a youth club when I was in primary school. So it'd be like a full circle sort of moment.
Oh
So
my God, wild.
we'll see if we can do that. I want to do some more in-person podcasts as well. So we
In
might have to
person
get you on in
definitely
person.
changes. Yeah, in person definitely changes the vibe for sure. Like it just
Yes.
makes it more of like a conversation, like a casual conversation, doesn't it?
The issue is I've got a 9 to 5 as well to work around.
I
So
know.
yeah, there's
Gotta
a
make
lot.
it big so that you can quit that and then
Yes. Yeah, well, exactly. Hopefully one day. But I'm not in control of that. The people that are listening are. They've got to
Yeah,
like and subscribe and
exactly.
all the good stuff. But
Yeah.
where can everyone find you on socials?
It is literally Grace H. Richardson on all platforms.
I will put links in the description below. Grace,
Epic.
thank you very much for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Guys, if you have enjoyed this one, drop it a like. If you are new, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.